I stumbled upon 3 terrifying hidden camera horror stories that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. The very thought of what lay behind it sends shivers down my spine. Curiosity can be a dangerous thing, they say, but that didn't stop me. I was just lounging on my couch, scrolling through endless videos online. My phone buzzed with an alert, a new compilation of hidden camera pranks. I turned it on, chuckling at the silly antics. But then it turned dark, real quick. The first story began with nighttime footage from a child's room. The camera caught an eerie shadow sliding across the wall, undetected by the sleeping child. My heart raced. Each tale was more unsettling than the last. The second clip revealed a man in a park, seemingly minding his own business. Until he began whispering to himself, looking around as if he was being watched. The camera zoomed in on his eyes, wide with terror, before he slid off the park bench and vanished into the bushes. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. The third story was a chilling encounter caught live in someone's home. A family left their baby sleeping upstairs while they hosted a party. Suddenly, the baby monitor cut to static, then a voice echoed through the feed, "I see you." The parents froze in horror, scanning the room. I felt my breath hitch, the walls seemed to inch closer. I was there, watching their panic unravel in real time. Darkness enveloped me. Somewhere outside, the wind howled like a restless spirit. Shadows danced across the walls, each flicker of the candle casting distorted shapes. I heard a creak behind me, a telltale groan of wood, making my heart thump harder. Just the house settling, I told myself. But the whispers, they kept coming. Maybe it was my imagination. Or maybe something else was lurking. Everything grew so quiet. Too quiet. My pulse quickened. I glanced around, the chill creeping in deeper. A sudden crash echoed from the kitchen. I jumped. My breath came short. Was I alone? The air felt thick, heavy with an unseen presence. I forced myself to move, inching toward the source of the sound. And then, there it was. A figure stood in the darkness, just beyond the threshold of the kitchen door. Unmoving. Silent. The only sound was my pounding heartbeat echoing in my ears. My mind screamed at me to run, yet my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. What did I just step into? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure didn't move, and yet it felt alive, a malice in the darkness, pulsing with a sinister energy. My gaze locked onto it, those shadows twisting around like smoke. My instincts screamed to flee, yet a morbid curiosity anchored me to that spot. My phone buzzed again, a message flashing across the screen. I should have ignored it, but it felt like a lifeline. With shaky hands, I picked it up. "Are you watching?" It read. My breath hitched. How did they know? I shot one last look at the figure. It was as if it sensed me, seeming to expand against the wall, darker than the night itself. I backed away slowly, my fingers trembling over the screen. Another notification chimed, a video, going live. The eerie sound of a baby crying filled the room, a chilling echo of the clip from before. "I see you," the voice whispered, almost familiar but laced with an unseen threat. My heart raced, a sudden association forming in my mind with that sinister footage. Had someone else seen the same horrors? Suddenly, a glint caught my eye. A flicker of movement from the corner of the kitchen, drawing my attention away from the phone. The figure shifted. It stretched, elongating into a grotesque shape, and my pulse quickened. I caught a glimpse of something white. Was it a face? I turned my back fully, nearly stumbling as I scrambled down the hallway towards the living room. The faint glow of the TV illuminated my path, relaying the stories I had thought were mere entertainment. I needed to see it. Maybe I could learn something that would make sense of this nightmare. As I approached, each step felt heavier, like I was wading through shadows. Then my eyes darted to the screen, where the video feed switched back to a dimly lit hallway, the camera capturing a young girl swaying back and forth, as if she were waiting for someone. The faint echo of giggling traveled through the speakers, weaving into the atmosphere like a spell. But this was no innocent laughter. It twisted, turning to sobs and moans that clawed at my sanity. Every hair on the back of my neck stood at attention. The laughter shaped itself into words, just audible enough for me to hear, "Come and play, we just want to play." I felt myself growing weaker, a pull heated by the compelling dread that wrapped around me like a shroud. Before I could blink, another notification blared on my phone. It was a live stream. A viewership count climbed rapidly. 700 views, 1,000 views. It climbed higher as I gripped the device, transfixed. The girl in the video stopped suddenly, tilting her head at an unnatural angle. "Where are you?" she whispered, her voice cracking like glass. The air around me thickened, suffocating, invading every pore. I fought to breathe, the tightening darkness pressing against my chest, and then it clicked. A chilling realization flooded through me. What if there was more? What if those hidden cameras were not just devices capturing fleeting moments but invitations into an unholy gathering? I turned sharply, my instincts screaming, and froze. The figure from the kitchen was standing in front of me now, inches away. Its features were indistinct, shrouded in darkness, but I could feel its gaze burning into me, pulling me into a catatonic acceptance. "Why are you afraid?" it breathed out, an icy wind sweeping over me, making me shudder. The familiar echoes of the child's laughter spiraled into a newfound terror, twisting and merging with that voice. "Don't you want to play?" My phone slipped from my grasp, crashing to the floor, the light illuminating the space around me one last time. The screen fizzled and died, plunging me into a suffocating darkness as everything went silent. That I took a step back, and that was all it took for me to realize something. My shadow was gone. I was adrift in a void where I once stood proudly, but now I felt weightless, like I might vanish into the air itself. The figure lunged forward, mouth stretching into a ghastly smile, revealing toothy grotesque shapes, yanking me into the abyss with it. And in that moment of unspeakable fear, as everything dissolved into shadows, the final thing I heard was the children's laughter echoing as if from all around me, welcoming and sinister. Then, silence. The darkness enveloped me like a wet blanket, thick and suffocating, pulling at my senses. It felt liquid, coiling around every part of me, dragging me down into a depthless chasm from which there seemed to be no return. Where the figure had once stood, the echo of malice lingered, an oppressive weight that clawed at my throat. I struggled, flailing within the black void, attempting to grasp something solid. Panic surged through me, a heartbeat pounding in my ears. My breath came in frantic gasps, and instinctively I called out, "Help! Someone!" My voice, a mere whisper, dissolved into the nothingness. Then, beneath the surface of the silence, I began to hear it. A low, rhythmic thumping pulsed through the void. It layered over my own frantic heartbeat, a drumbeat echoing around me, rising and falling like a tide. Compelled by it, I started to drift, the sensation oddly intoxicating, luring me deeper into the night. With a sudden jolt, I was thrust back into awareness, a disheveled room illuminated solely by the flickering light of an old television. The horror sank its teeth in anew, the screen displayed static, a chaotic swirl of white noise, but I could hear it, the laugh, that distorted, chilling laughter echoing, pulling at my sanity. "Welcome, little lamb," the voice whispered, slimy and syrupy as if it dripped from a creature's gnarled mouth. I scrambled to my feet, mind racing with thoughts of escape, but the air seemed to thicken again. Reality felt flimsy, like an illusion hiding something far worse just beneath its surface. Suddenly, the laughter morphed into the sounds of a nursery rhyme, a haunting melody that reminded me of childhood but twisted into something maddening. Ring o roses, a pocket full of posies, it sang softly but then twisted into a shriek, Adishu. Adishu. We all fall down. I stumbled backward until I hit the wall, my fingers splayed against the cold surface, grounding me, yet it felt more like a prison. The laughter transformed into a growl, one that slithered around my mind, wrapping tighter and tighter with each passing second. Above the din, I spotted something shimmering at the edge of the room. Drawn by a magnetic force, I stepped closer, the image illuminating in the glow of the screen. A mirror stood in the corner, its surface foggy and warped, the edges cracked like spiderwebs. It bore no reflection of me, instead, I saw shadows twisting and writhing, a mass of dark figures swirling towards the center. They reached out, teasingly inviting, as if they were trying to break free, compelled by a strange yearning. I reached out, my fingertips brushing the glass. A jolt shot through me, a surge of electricity that ignited as the laughter crescendoed around me. The figures in the mirror shifted, morphing into faces I thought I recognized, friends, family, each one contorted in a scream that didn't escape their lips. I pulled my hand back, horrified, but the figures remained, their eyes now boring into my soul, begging me to join them, to slip through the glass into the abyss. No. No. I gasped, clutching my chest as dread suffocated me. The laughter stopped abruptly, silence returning with a chilling finality. I turned, heart racing, and the television screen erupted with images, quick flashbacks of my own life, moments pulled unceremoniously from memory, pieces of laughter, tears, whispered secrets, all twisted with grotesque additions, thumbnails of terror intertwined, and then, in stark contrast to the forgotten familiarity, I saw an unfamiliar darkness, a gaping maw among the memories, black and enticing. The fleeting images grew frantic, the faces blurred in a swirl, and then they came to a sudden halt. An image froze, my reflection in that mirror, smiling back at me through gritted teeth. I staggered backward, heart racing, but the image reached out of the glass, extending a hand towards me, fingertips brushing the surface as it cracked. You will come, it seemed to whisper, you will join us. Suddenly, the room began to shake, objects rattled, and a shriek split through the air. Reverberating, clawing at my ears with raw terror. The mirror cracked again, shards cascading, and I felt the pull begin, a collapse of space, the walls bending, warping as shadows poured from the broken surface like a flood. Then, with an overwhelming force, a figure burst forth from the shattered mirror, shrouded in the remnants of darkness. It stood before me, horrific and magnificent, eyes flickering with the echoes of pain and laughter. Your turn to play, it hissed, and the void behind me trembled in response. As I staggered back, I felt my feet slip from solid ground, the world around me dissolving into darkness. The last thing I heard was that same little girl's voice, echoing, why don't you just stay and play with us forever? And then, I fell into the abyss, the laughter spiraling down with me, consuming everything in its path. The darkness yawned open beneath me, swallowing whole the last remnants of light. I plummeted, the sensation of weightlessness clawing at my insides, the screams of the damned echoing in the distance, a cacophony of despair that wrapped around me like ivy. Each second felt stretched, every heartbeat resonating with the echoes of my own impending doom. Then, suddenly, I landed not with a thud but with a soft, almost gel-like embrace. The ground felt alive, pulsing beneath me, thrumming with a rhythm that mirrored the heartbeat I thought was my own. Struggling to rise, I pushed against the ground, but the surface held me down like hands tightening around my ankles, dragging me back as if it were eager to keep me among its own. Do you hear them? A voice hissed from somewhere beyond the shadows. They're waiting for you. It whispered sweet nothings that drenched my mind in a sickly warmth, reminiscent of childhood comforts now corrupted. With a surge of adrenaline, I forced myself upright, my surroundings slowly coalescing. Gnarled roots twisted through the ground, fusing with the walls of an unending cavern, dripping with moisture that sparkled like cursed jewels. Faint lights flickered at the edges of my vision, fluttering like moths, providing a hypnotic spell that drew me further in. Help, I croaked, desperation coating each syllable, but the sound dissolved into the damp air, lost, swallowed by the oppressive shadows. Pain gripped my chest as I realized I was utterly alone, a terrifying truth that sunk its claws deep into my heart. the rhythmic drumming returned, louder now, pulsing through the earth. It seemed to echo from the depths, rising and falling in a macabre dance that both intrigued and terrified me. I staggered forward, curiosity seeping in despite the dread clawing at my gut. With every step, whispers slithered closer, their voices a soft tapestry of confusion and threat. "Join us, never escape, play forever." They wrapped around me, taunting and seductive. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block it out, but it only grew louder, and then, I saw it, a sliver of light emerging from the darkness. It beckoned me like the sun breaking the surface of a stormy ocean. I sprinted toward it, ignoring the tug of despair that sought to pull me back. As I neared, the light expanded, opening into a vast clearing, a grotesque mockery of nature. The trees, twisted into unnatural shapes, bore faces carved into their bark, silent screams etched in desperation, eyes rolling in eternal agony. In the center of the clearing stood a massive, gnarled tree. Its roots spread wide, encircling a pulsating heart that throbbed like a living monster. The heart's rhythm matched the drumming I had followed, and the sound took on a darker tone, a promise of sinister allure. Around the clearing were figures, hunched and shrouded, their movements jerky and unnatural, like marionettes pulled by unseen strings. My heart raced as I recognized them, friends and family long gone, faces I had mourned, their expressions twisted in a state of terror or rapture. They swayed in unison, their mouths moving, chanting a phrase I couldn't quite decipher, but I felt the weight behind it, a call to join them, to become one with the darkness. "Stay," the whispers begged with a choking urgency. "Be one of us." Suddenly, an overwhelming dread surged through me. The heart pulsed with a life of its own, and I felt it targeting me, narrowing its focus, drawing me in. The figures turned as one, their eyes boring into mine, and in that moment, I was paralyzed, trapped between the pull of the heart and the knowledge that they were lost souls, forever tethered to this torment. That I stumbled back, realizing too late that the darkness had eyes and they were all upon me. "You took too long," a voice sneered, stretching from one of the shadows, its familiarity unsettling. "You could be joined us willingly, but now." A roar erupted from the tree, a sound that seemed to shatter reality, causing the very ground to crack beneath me. The roots around my feet tightened, holding me in place. As the tendrils of darkness began to weave through the air, reaching for my throat, desperation clawed through me as I tried to pull free, but the root held tight. "No!" I screamed, fighting against the force pulling me into the cacophony of lost souls, toward the heart that beat like a drum of doom. Then a sudden silence enveloped the clearing, the figures paused mid-chant, and for a breathless moment, everything stilled. Their eyes widened, reflecting a fear that mirrored my own, a fear of what was coming, a looming presence that darkened the bright veneer of the clearing, and then the shadows exploded to life, a tidal wave of darkness erupting from the heart, swallowing everything in its path. I was caught within it, vision clouding, the air thick with despair as I felt myself being pulled into the heart of it all, the inevitable cycle repeating as they whispered, "Everyone plays eventually." Then, all at once, the chanting ceased, plunging me into profound silence, and the last thing I heard was the once familiar voice of a friend, a hollow echo begging, "Remember us," and then there was only darkness. All at once, I was shaken from the veil of darkness by an oppressive realization. I was no longer the one being hunted. I had become a part of the shadows, a mere whisper in the twisted song of torment that echoed through the cavern. The sickening warmth of the heart pulsed at my core, and I could feel the remnants of my former self slipping through the cracks of wavering consciousness. That I blinked, and with each blink, the world around me sharpened, clarity slicing through the haze. I stumbled backward, driven by a raw instinct for survival, and collapsed against the gnarled tree, its bark cool against my skin. The faces etched into the wood seemed to grin down at me, their expressions glimmering with malevolence. It was a mocking welcome. "Welcome home," a voice splintered through the air, low and sonorous, sending shivers spiraling down my spine. I turned, heart thrumming wildly, and saw them, the figures now cast in a ghostly luminescence, the faces of the lost flickering with a haunting recognition. They stretched out their arms toward me, twisted and beckoning, as if urging me to take my rightful place among them. "Join us," they coaxed, their voices merging into a lament that reverberated in the pit of my stomach. You were always meant to be one of us. I shook my head violently, my body moving in primal protest against their calls. I could not succumb. I prided myself on my willpower. But doubt wormed its way into my mind, planting seeds of temptation. Images of long-lost memories rushed at me, moments of laughter and warmth that now seemed eclipsed by fateful shadows. I clutched my temples, fighting against the tide of longing. But it was too late. The ground beneath me trembled once again, a shuddering echo that rippled through the very heart of the cavern. You think it's a choice? The familiar voice crooned from the darkness around me, dripping with venomous sweetness. My heart sank as I recognized it, my brother, Vincent. The very source of regret, the one I thought I had lost forever, now existing in this godforsaken realm. That he slipped through the ragged shadows, his features grotesque yet beautiful in a way only the damned could be. You run and run, but you cannot escape your blood. Each step he took forward seemed to chain me in place, cementing my fate as the roots intertwined with my limbs, strengthening their grip. Vincent! I rasped, desperation flooding my voice. What happened to you? I've searched for you. But the words sliced through the air with little weight. Search no more. I am right here, he smiled, his mouth widening unnaturally, revealing rows of polished teeth that dripped with malice. There is no solace, sister. You are home now. Embrace it. Panic surged through me as shivers ran down my spine, and instinct kicked in. I tore my gaze from his horrid smile and glanced around. The heart throbbed louder, resonating through the ground as the figures began to close in, chanting a new phrase, a crescendo that built like a storm. Come out, become one. Suddenly, an unworldly shriek pierced the cavern, drowning out the melody of echoes, sending the figures into a tremor of fear. They recoiled, their chants faltering into breathless gasps. I felt the ground quaking, as though something beneath was awakening. A predator stirred from its slumber. From the depths of the darkness erupted a mass, a writhing formation that eclipsed even the pulsating heart. Tendrils of shadow lashed out like serpents, stretching toward the figures with an insatiable hunger. Run! I shouted instinctively, breaking through the fog of dread. It's coming for you. But they didn't move. They remained rooted, entranced, bound by their devotion to the heart. I then realized the truth: they weren't afraid for themselves, it was me who needed to flee. With the heart pounding like a war drum, I tore away from the tree, fueled by the primal instinct to survive, as the shadows reached for me once more. Vincent let out a wail, his face twisted in torment, pleading, "Don't leave me." I sprinted back toward the clearing, the walls of darkness closing in, the air thick with the rancid scent of despair. You have nowhere to run. His voice echoed, but I pushed onward, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The shadows lunged, charging forward in a breathtaking frenzy, as the heart's call rang out, louder and commanding. I could see the exit, a distant sliver of brightness, flickering in and out of existence. One desperate leap, I thought, and then I'll be free. I couldn't look back. Not now. Not ever. Then, in an instant, the ground beneath me ripped apart, a gaping maw opening, swallowing whatever hope remained. I felt the rush of air being torn from my lungs as I tumbled down into the abyss below, the pulse of darkness reaching for my soul. As I fell, engulfed in blackness, I heard her voice whisper once more, distant yet close enough to freeze my heart. Remember us. And in that moment, I saw Vincent's face, glimmering from the edge of the shadow, one last pleading look before I vanished into the void, crushed beneath the weight of inevitable doom. Then, everything went silent. I awoke in a chilling stillness, swallowed by the oppressive darkness that clung to me like an unwanted second skin. My body lay flat against a cold surface, rigid and unyielding. No pain lingered, just a peculiar numbness that spread through my limbs, as though I had crossed a threshold into another realm, a cold, uninviting purgatory. Slowly, I forced myself to sit up, the echo of my heart a distant drumbeat in my ears. I blinked and squinted into the blankness surrounding me, searching for any hint of light or form. The air carried a cloying scent reminiscent of something rotten, a miasma of decay that seeped into my lungs and filled me with a primal revulsion. Is anyone there? My voice cracked, reverberating softly, swallowed by the darkness. A low, rasping sound answered me, a figure emerging from the void, smeared in ash and shadow. It approached, moving with an unsettling grace that set my nerves alight. Just as the contours of its form solidified into a recognizable shape, I realized it was one of the lost ones, the figures I had seen in the cavern, now stripped of their former beauty, reduced to grotesque husks. Its hollow eyes met mine, and a shudder racked my body as I recoiled. "Help us," it croaked, and the words rolled off its tongue like ash. I sensed the weight of despair behind that one tiny plea and the unspeakable horror that had torn it from what remained of its humanity. "Join us," it chanted, its voice overlapping with the sorrowful murmurs of others slowly edging closer. I turned and saw more figures, their bodies warped by anguish, each creaked step resonating like a funeral toll deep inside me. "No!" I gasped, scrambling backward away from the mass, but the cold surface beneath me shifted, revealing itself to be a shifting, pulsing thing. It squirmed beneath my fingers, slick and wet, as if it were alive. Panic clutched at my throat as I understood the ground was an extension of the darkness, alive with tortured souls that yearned for release. The figures grew bolder, reaching toward me with fingers dark and matted with soil, their voices stitched together in a wailing chorus. "You cannot escape the bond. You belong to us. Please, stop." I screamed, but the sound was lost amidst their relentless stranglehold of wretchedness. The coldness encroached upon me, enveloping my limbs, whispering promises of oblivion. I could feel my essence evolving into one of them, liberation through surrender. The shadows shifted around me, growing charged with a fervor that sent sparks racing along my spine. Then there came a crack, sharp and brutal, echoing through the suffocating veil, the thunderous sound of the heart thrumming louder than ever. It resonated not just in my bones but in the very marrow of my existence. The realization pierced through my fogging thoughts. I was in the heart of it all, standing at the precipice of a wrathful awakening. The gathered souls entangled themselves tighter, pulling me toward the pulsating rhythm, their worn faces twisted in ecstasy and anguish as they sang out in rapture. "Feed it. Become. Feed it. It's drawing you in," a familiar voice shattered through the din, and my breath hitched. Amidst the chaos, Vincent stepped forward, distorted and yet achingly recognizable. "Don't let it take you. Not like me." His face fluctuated between the angel I once knew and the demon he had become, a distorted reflection of our shared past. With a sudden jolt, the world quaked beneath us. The heart's pulse escalated to a deafening roar, pulsating in a frenzied tempo, and as if reacting to the desperation in my heart, the ground thrust upward with a violent force. The lost souls screamed, their wails blending into a cacophony of terror as they were thrust back, their forms dissolving into the air like smoke. "Fight, sister," Vincent urged, his voice a lifeline within a storm. "You must choose." But before I could respond, the shadows twisted and contorted into a shapeless mass, swirling around us, obscuring any flicker of hope. I felt the life I fought so hard to preserve begin to slip away, drawn toward the darkness that craved my light. Every desperate desire to escape tautened like a bowstring, trembling beneath the weight of the unknown as the shadows beckoned with an invitation laced in ancient, ghostly ballads. "Your heart beats for us, your soul hungers to return." In that moment, the floor shifted violently beneath me, and sharp tendrils of darkness shot toward Vincent, thrumming with an insatiable hunger. I watched in horror as he shifted, attempting to shield himself from the oncoming chaos, the flicker of his form dimming like a snuffed flame. "Don't!" I screamed, throwing myself toward him in a final act of desperation, the air heavy with inevitability. As my fingers brushed against his outstretched hand, a thunderclap of darkness exploded around us, and then, nothing. Darkness enveloped me once more, heavy and oppressive, stealing the breath from my lungs. I felt the tug of something icy gripping my heart, the heartbeat of the abyss pulsing against my palm, confirming the gruesome truth: I was not alone. Just as the silence threatened to consume me entirely, a blinding light erupted within the dark, brighter than the sun, searing through the shadows. And from that light, I screamed as the face of Vincent appeared again before me, twisted in agony as the shadows clawed at him, hungry and relentless. Save yourself. He shouted, his voice breaking, as the light flickered weakly between us. Your choice, you must choose. The sheer terror of that moment hung thick in the air, a knife poised between our final destinies. And within that scream, his eyes echoed a warning, one I could not yet fathom, as the darkness surged forward with a ravenous roar. And everything went dark. I gasped for air, the haze of unconsciousness lifting as I found myself in a new place, a cavernous expanse, illuminated by a sickly, flickering light. The distant sound of dripping water echoed off the unfathomable stone walls, each drop resonating like a heartbeat, pulsing insistently in my ears. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the remnants of that last horror, the memory of Vincent's cry desperate and haunting, but I was alone now. The specters, the oppressive weight of their sorrow, had receded, replaced by an unsettling stillness that sent shivers down my spine. The flickering light above me projected shadows that danced along the walls, mimicking tortured faces, mouths open in silent screams. I stumbled to my feet, every muscle taut with anxiety. Shadows seemed to writhe around me like snakes, coiling tighter with every step I took away from the source of light. As I walked, I could feel the cold stone floor beneath my bare feet, slick with moisture and an unidentifiable substance that left a rancid taste in my mouth. A primal instinct urged me to flee, yet the darkness whispered secrets too alluring to resist. I approached the source of light, each heartbeat reverberating with dread, a fire pit, surrounded by a circle of ancient stones, its flames flickering ominously as if alive, licking at the air with a mind of its own. It felt as if the room held its breath, waiting. And then, like a bolt of lightning, a chill swept through me, and I was not alone. Welcome, traveler, a voice slithered through the air, smooth and oily. A figure emerged from the shadows, adorned in tattered robes that seemed to blend seamlessly with the gloom. Its eyes glinted, reflecting the firelight in a predatory gaze. You've come to witness the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Who are you? I demanded, my voice quaking despite the bravado I tried to project. Just a humble guide, it replied, stepping closer. I could see now that its skin was a mottled gray, stretched tight over a skeletal frame. But you are much more. You carry within you the promise of power. The darkness craves you, and you have the chance to join it freely. To become one of the lost ones. No. My protest echoed around the cavern, bouncing off the walls and returning to me, a wretched mockery. I want to go home. Home. The figure laughed, a sound that scraped against my sanity. This is the true home, where the chosen thrive. As the flames blazed higher, I could make out shapes swirling just outside the firelight. Faces twisted, mournful, their eyes filled with an unimaginable hunger. They hovered just beyond, battling the shadows as if dosed with despair. You want to escape? The figure continued, circling me with a predatory grace. Then bear witness. It's not just Vincent you could save, it's the entire realm if you embrace the inevitable. A rush of power surged around me, swarming like a tempest, filling every crevice of my being with a longing I could barely fight. The figure gestured dismissively, and the captured souls leaned forward, their spectral forms glowing faintly, as if tempting me with forgotten memories and unfinished lives. I had never felt so drawn, so complete, yet so utterly terrified. Suddenly, the fire flared violently, illuminating the cavern in an otherworldly glow. Within the blaze, I saw a figure emerge, another, this one familiar. It was the embodiment of everything I had lost, a silhouette draped in shadows, faces morphing and twisting into Vincent's face, flickering between hope and horror. His voice broke through the flames, raw with desperation. Do not listen to them. Do not let this darkness consume you. I can break through, but you have to fight. The figure by my side grew agitated, its form flickering like the flames, eyes narrowing. You can't save him. Not in this realm. The walls began to close in, and the ravenous faces surged, screaming silently as their collective noise thudded against my mind. Desperation clawed at my heart, drowning me in a flood of turmoil. I stood at the edge of a precipice, a choice looming. Like a blackened void join the endless night or chase the flicker of hope that promised salvation, then everything spiraled out of control. The fire surged, flames licking higher as shadows surged around me, clawing at the ground beneath my feet. The cavern shook, stone trembling, and I was left with one horrifying realization: as the fire surrounded me, it was not a beacon of hope, it was a doorway, and my hesitation would either seal my doom or unshackle a hell bred from pain. In that moment, the ground seemed to erupt around me, opening like a maw ready to devour everything. And in the darkness below, I saw glowing eyes watching, waiting. A cool, slippery hand clasped my wrist, the guide's sinister grin piercing through the chaos. "Choose wisely, traveler. The abyss is hungry tonight." Before I could respond, the earth beneath my feet crumbled, and I plummeted into the unfathomable darkness below. I screamed into the void, my voice mingling with thousands of echoes, all whispering one chilling truth: join us, join us. The last vestige of light flickered, and I felt the cold embrace of oblivion close around me, the darkness breathing its fiery, hungry dreams. As I descended, the sensation of falling morphed into a suffocating stillness that enveloped me, thick and suffocating, making the very air taste metallic and bitter. When I finally landed, for there was a landing of sorts, though the surface was soft and damp like the insides of a cave, I was met with absolute silence, the only sound the soft thudding of my heart. I lay there for a moment, trying to gather myself, consumed by a sense of disorientation. Gradually, I pushed myself up, squinting into the Stygian darkness. The faint glow I had seen before had vanished, leaving me alone with my fraying nerves. The ground was uneven, and as I stood, I realized I was not merely in a new space but perhaps in a new layer of hell. "Make your choice," a whisper emerged from the shadows, the same oily voice. "There are paths you can take, but beware, some lead to salvation, while others feed the abyss." The very fabric of the air pulsed as if laden with life, making the hairs on the back of my neck prick up. It felt alive, breathing, as though I had stumbled into a sentient catacomb that bore witness to every soul that had ever wandered its dark corridors. Hesitantly, I stepped forward, my bare feet squelching in a slick, unclear liquid. The darkness seemed to thicken around me, wrapping tendrils around my ankles. Caution whispered in my mind, but the urge to find Vincent screamed louder. "Show yourself." I called, my voice louder than intended, echoing like a bell through the crushing darkness. In response, an eerie light sparked, illuminating only a small section of the cavern. A grotesque image emerged against the flickering shadows, a mirror, tarnished and cracked, its surface crawling with darkness like an ink spill. Each fracture distorted the room in such a way that it seemed to hold a multitude of terrifying realities. I could hear sobs echoing from it, familiar and piercing. The sound drew me closer with an inexplicable magnetic pull. As I reached out, the air drew tight around me. Shadows surged forth, a swirling mass of emotion and despair. I saw faces, those who had been lost, trapped like moths fluttering around the flame, their mouths gaping open in silent cries. They reached out to my outstretched hand with skeletal fingers, a paralyzing terror gripping my heart as I felt the life they had once held, now decaying into empty voids. "Help us. Free us." The faces howled in a symphony of anguish as if begging from the depths of their blackened souls. I recoiled, the visceral fear clawing at my insides, as their essence seeped closer. "No. I can't help you." But as I turned to flee, the cavern shifted. The shadows twisted, pulling tight as if the walls themselves were closing in. The mirror pulsed violently, and within its depths, Vincent's face manifested amidst the chaos, his expression twisted in grief, his eyes flowing with luminous tears of pure agony. "Please, don't leave me. You must choose," he pleaded, his voice penetrating the darkness around me. "You have the power to save them, we can get out together. But you must embrace the darkness." In that instant, I felt it creeping back, a seductive whisper that curled around my heart, urging me to yield. The shadows reached out, desperate for my acknowledgement, promising power and knowledge beyond comprehension if I simply took their toll, my fear and my humanity. "Vincent!" I cried, my heart thundering within my chest. But at what cost? The cavern trembled with his response. At the cost of everything, but it's the only way. You can set them free. If you don't, we'll all be chained here forever. Sweat dripped down my back, my body amped with adrenaline, caught in the nexus between light and shadow. Gritting my teeth, I considered my next move a desperate play, born from despair, love, and fear. Suddenly, chilling screams rent the air, reverberating against the stone, shrill and panicked. Figures began to shift in the darkness surrounding me, more souls materializing from the void, faces twisted in terror. Among them, a few bore striking resemblance to those I had known, their shadows pulsating with the horrors I had fled from. Help us, they cried simultaneously, voices crashing over one another like a wave, drowning me in guilt. Help us before they take you too. With dread settling like a lead weight in my chest, I felt the boundaries of my resolve teetering on the brink. My vision narrowed, focus lost, every choice cascading into infinite horrors swirling around me. It all unraveled. The cavern exploded into chaos as the shadows surged like a monstrous tide, drawing closer, their whispers distorting into a growing roar. It was then that I understood, they didn't just want to be freed, but they sought to drag me down with them, a sacrifice to appease the abyss. Darkness swelled around me as Vincent's fading cries echoed in my ears, their voices turned to gnarled laughter, crashing rapturously against my sanity. And just as I thought I could break free, I felt something icy seize my wrist from behind. A glimmer of malevolent joy filled the shadows, closing in a wicked chorus of voices chanting, one of us, one of us. I turned to face the throng behind me, heart racing, only to find the malevolent figure from before, its grin stretching wider as glowing eyes surrounded me in a circle both infinite and inescapable. Now, you must choose. It howled, darkness rippling as if alive, yearning to consume me whole. And amidst the chaos, I felt Vincent's presence falter, the last flicker of hope extinguished with a flick of a supernatural wrist. Time slowed as I realized there was no promise of salvation left. My decision loomed before me, gathering its weight like an avalanche. And before I could scream, the darkness crashed over me, the shadows swallowed the last vestiges of light, and I recognized the voices yelling. Join us, I had already surrendered. The darkness throbbed, a heartbeat of its own as I flailed against the grip on my wrist. My thoughts spiraled with panic, a suffocating blend of dread and despair. The world around me seemed to warp, a surreal haze where nightmares took on flesh and bone, and laughter echoed with sinister delight. Join us, the voices mocked as I strained against the icy fingers that gripped my skin, slick and unyielding, pulling me toward the mass of shadows. It was more than just an invitation, it was a demand, urgent and dripping with malice. Vincent! I cried out, desperation ripping my throat. But the name sputtered, lost against the clamoring insistence of the souls who longed for my surrender. I could feel my strength waning, the thrumming darkness fighting for its harvest. Just as I felt myself being dragged into the oblivion of despair, I remembered the glinting eyes, Vincent's eyes gleaming through the chaos like a lighthouse in a tempest. With a visceral shout, I redirected my energy, channeling my love for him, a tether binding me to the light, fighting against the crushing tide. Vincent! I yelled again, forcing his name through clenched teeth. I won't leave you. Behind the growing cacophony of shadows, I could swear I saw him, the fleeting outline of his form coalescing within the haze, glowing faintly, a guide amid the abyss. Find me! He urged, voice breaking, reverberating through the darkness, bridging the gap between despair and hope. Emboldened, I tightened my grip on this fragile thread of connection, my pulse sinking to the erratic beat of the darkness that surrounded me. I took a shaky but determined step forward, back toward the direction of his voice. Every inch felt like dragging a mountain. The cacophony intensified, an angry storm as the shadows closed in, pushing against my resolve, threatening to obliterate me into the indistinct void. Then, just as I thought I might collapse beneath the relentless malevolence, I felt warmth, an anchor cut through the icy tendrils and snaring me. A bright spark flared to life deep within, casting shadows against the encroaching darkness. Vincent's light. In that moment, a cacophony of souls shuddered in frustration, shifting and swirling like a fierce wind around my form. They screeched and howled in dismay as I broke free of the icy grasp. With a guttural scream, I pushed against the shadows, the warmth within forging a blazing path through the blackness, a raging inferno against their whispers. "Vincent!" I bellowed, forcing every ounce of desperation into each syllable as I desperately sought him. The world contorted around me, fragments crystallizing into a semblance of clarity, the faces of the lost flickering in and out like flames dancing against the onslaught of night. Then, as if the shrieks of agony turned to gasps, the furious roiling shadows stirred uneasily, a sliver of sunlight breaking through a dark cloud. I took a step, and another, feeling the raw energy coil around me, the shadows retreating like mist before the dawn, howling in outrage as I forged my way, and then I saw him, really saw him, standing a mere breath away. Vincent stood at the threshold of light, pale but radiant, an ethereal glow that bound me with tangible hope. "You found me!" he exclaimed, relief pouring from his eyes, and together we surged forward, my heart thundering at the thought of freedom, but the shadows fought back, restless and vengeful, and with a monstrous roar, they surged toward us. I was surrounded, consumed by a dark tremor that threatened to drag me back into despair. The walls of the cavern quaked, fissures crawling like spiders at the edges of my vision, the shadows scrambling to reclaim their prize. "Run!" Vincent shouted, as he grasped my hand, his warmth blending with my rising fear, igniting a fierce determination within me. Together, we raced toward the fragile barrier of light ahead, but the shadows wouldn't relent. "You cannot escape!" they roared, their voices merging into a thunderous chorus that reverberated through the very core of my being. With their screams, the ground bucked beneath me, splintering, and I stumbled, falling into the yawning chasm that had opened beneath my feet. That I grasped for Vincent, but the abyss pulled us apart, the relentless darkness coiling around me, threatening to swallow me whole. In that harrowing moment, I felt the suffocating cold seeping in, an icy tendril wrapping around my throat, constricting my breath. "No! I must hold on!" I cried into the void, and right before the certainty of failure enveloped me, I glimpsed Vincent's face, anguished but fierce. "I will not let go!" he roared, stretching his hand toward me, the light around him pulsing in defiance of the unreal horror closing in on us. But before I could reach him, the shadows unleashed a wailing surge, cloaking everything in obsidian terror. That I was flung through the darkness, time and space folding in on themselves, until I landed hard upon a surface wet and cold. The air reeked of decay, and when I opened my eyes to the roiling chaos around me, I could hear their whispers, a deafening anthem of torment. The last thing I saw before the shadows claimed me was Vincent, his eyes wide with horror, his hand outstretched, as the abyss swallowed the last flicker of our light, and then silence. In that heavy quiet, I felt a pulse of dread creeping through me. I was not truly alone. The air thickened, caught in the remnants of despair. I turned slowly, and within the dark corners of my new world, I sensed them, wretched souls lingering, their empty eyes glinting as they approached. They encircled me like a sinister halo, and one voice far too familiar hissed from the depths, "Welcome home." With that revelation, my heart plummeted as I realized, the game was only just beginning. I awoke in darkness, the weight of despair pressing against my chest like a shroud, thick and suffocating. My surroundings felt damp and cold, sending a shiver rippling through me. As I forced myself to sit up, the echoes of laughter danced in my mind, mocking the fragile threads of reality that tethered me to this plane. This was it, the culmination of the shadows. The deep, insatiable darkness had finally consumed me. A cold wind swept through the space, carrying whispers that seemed to spiral around my ears, pulling me under like the tides of a haunting abyss. "You're one of us now," the voices cooed, their unsettling melody causing my skin to crawl. Panic surged as I pushed myself upright, glancing around, desperate to find a source of light, a flicker of hope in what felt like an eternal night. "Vincent!" I shouted, my voice lost in the crushing black, swallowed whole by the darkness. I was powerless, stranded in this realm of lost souls, each one lingering with regrets unfathomable, desires that twisted and writhed like living things. "You have to find me." But I could hear nothing. His voice, that beacon of warmth, was nowhere to be found. With every heartbeat, despair gnawed at my insides, threatening to consume the very essence of my being. Then I felt it, a chill, like fingers brushing against my neck. Instinct took over and I turned, catching a glimpse of shadows converging from the corners of the room. They bubbled up like ink spilling across water, their forms twisting into horrific shapes that echoed the faces of the lost souls I had seen before. "What do you want from me?" I croaked, my voice trembling as I fought against the encroaching panic. Those twisted features sneered at me, the incandescent horror reflecting back from the murky depths of their eyes. "We want you to join us," one hissed, its voice echoing the remnants of human grief twisted by darkness. "You are so close, dear child." Heart pounding, I stumbled backward, colliding with another, smoother surface, something metallic, yet slick. I swung my arm, poised for a fight, but stumbled instead, crashing to the ground as the laughter, once so distant, erupted around me. "Join us. Embrace the darkness." It chanted, echoing an ancient hymn of horror I had once tried to escape. Tendrils of shadow snaked around my ankles, binding me in place as I fought to scream. The air thickened, heavy and rancid, suffocating, bumping against my throat. And in that moment of desperation, a flicker of warmth ignited within me, the feral instinct to survive overrode the oppressive gloom. I reached deep, past the despair and shadows choking me, calling forth every ounce of willpower to claw my way back to the surface, a surface I desperately wanted to believe was still accessible. "No!" I shrieked, wrenching my body free from their icy grasp, bolting forward with the last vestige of my strength. I had to find Vincent. My heart raced as I tore through the expanse of darkness, my fingers grazing the slick walls, feeling the pulsating chaos thrumming beneath my palms like a heartbeat waiting to lay claim to me. That I heard it then, a sound so familiar, like distant bells chiming amidst the horror. A voice, broken yet fierce, broke through the tormentuous atmosphere. "Don't give in. You have the power." It was Vincent. A surge of hope pierced through the abyss, the agony of my surroundings shifted as I followed his voice, racing toward that flickering glow that threatened to dissolve like smoke. "Vincent!" I bellowed against the cacophony swirling around me. The shadows recoiled as if stung, allowing me a precious moment to glimpse light, a soft, pale glow mounting in the distance. "I'm coming!" I shouted, the resolve of love and desperation propelling me forward. Yet, with every step I took, the gnarled figures writhed, pushing back, the shadows converging to reclaim what was theirs. The voices descended into an enraged roar, each figure a grotesque amalgamation of lost souls, twisting in an intricate dance of death. "You cannot escape!" they cried, their amalgamations of pain merging with a hideous laughter that ricocheted around me, driving me stronger, as I pushed against their relentless grip, determined to reach my brother. As the light flickered closer, I stumbled, barely regaining my footing as a furious gale swept through the darkness, howling through the shadows that encircled me. And there within the storm a figure emerged, radiant against the void. It was Vincent, luminescent and untouchable. "Keep going. You can do it," he urged, the ethereal warmth radiating from him, cutting through the frigid despair that clung to me like leeches, but so close. The shadows lashed out, snapping at my heels as I surged toward him, fueled by the prospect of liberation. "Don't let them drag you back," he implored, but the darkness lurked behind me, the whispers clawing desperately for my surrender. "Join us. Forever," they insisted, vengeful and wild. "No!" I screamed, my voice raw and desperate, fighting the deluge of despair threatening to pull me under. "I want to join you." I reached deep within, summoning all the memories of light, of laughter, of moments that reminded me I had once stood apart from this darkness, that there had once been hope. I let it wash over me, transforming my timid resolve into a fiery determination, and I broke the shadow's grasp, bursting forth toward Vincent, my heart pounding louder than the chaos. I could hear his pleas cutting through the fog, urging me on as I finally broke into the light. A burst of brilliance engulfed us as I reached out to him. Our hands clasped, and in that singular moment of connection, we became a beacon against the darkness, but as I felt the warmth of his touch, an icy chill washed over the light, extinguishing it in an instant. The shadows roared, the crescendo of their maddening screams enveloping us as they surged forward, threatening to erase us from existence. "You chose this." They wailed, relentless, their grip tightening around our throats. That in a final act of desperation, as the darkness surged forward, I drew from the depths of my fear, my love, and my anguish. No. We choose light. I screamed, feeling the very essence of our bond surge through us, the grasp of despair shattering against our shared warmth. The shadows, caught in our light, withdrew in shrieking agony, and in that moment of clarity, a rift opened before us, the promise of a new dawn on the other side. But I felt a familiar tug at my heart, an intense heaviness weighing me down. The darkness was stretching its tendrils toward Vincent, seeking to grasp him even as we flew toward freedom. No. Vincent, don't. I shouted as he turned, a knowing sadness in his eyes. I'll follow you, sister. Always, he said, but already I could see his form thinning, fading against the light. Just as the shadows closed in once more, I lunged, grabbing him, pulling strength from our bond, drawing on all we had endured, and for the briefest of moments, our hands held steadfast, but then they slipped. The veil of darkness snapped, and the shadows engulfed him in a ravenous fury as the rift widened, swallowing that familiar face, and as the echo of his anguished cry echoed in my soul, I was pulled through the other side, a blinding light overcoming me, a twist of reality like a taut lasso wrenching me from the abyss that had threatened to consume me. The chaos faded into nothingness. That I fell onto solid ground, panting for breath, the memories of dark laughter echoing in my mind as I sat up in a world reclaimed by light. But something lingered fastened to my heart like a vice, the haunting shadow of Vincent's fading smile. I looked around, bewildered but alive, yet the weight of loss settled in a dark reminder of how close I had come. Days passed, I doubted my escape had been entirely real. Shadows flitted at the edges of my vision, taunting me with familiar whispers. I longed for the peace of my old life, yet beneath the surface lurked an unsettling darkness that rippled through the normalcy I now inhabited. While my friends laughed and moved forward, I felt the presence of those who had lingered, their pull never quite forgotten. And then one night, I ventured to a mirror, heart pounding as I stared at my reflection, haunted by flickers of faces close to my heart, twisted in anguish, and Vincent's visage materialized behind me, clear and bright. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice slicing through the silence. "You can't escape what you've become." I turned slowly, and the shadows encroached from behind, laughter bubbling up gleefully. They had never truly left, it sprawled across my life like ink on paper. And as the darkness enveloped me once more, I understood. I hadn't just escaped a monster, it had been implanted into my very essence. The shadows had dressed as light, and eventually, they would welcome me home. The chilling laughter echoed like a distant chorus as I whispered the only thought that kept gnawing at me: one day, I will join you.